Welcome to the Found Symbol. We are four actual Freemasons, and we're going to discuss all the symbols, signs, and Easter eggs in Episode 7, Noögenesis, of Dan Brown's The Lost Symbol. All right, I'm John, and I'm here with Jason, Robert, and Joe, and here for another week. So, fair warning, there will be spoilers ahead. So, if you haven't seen yesterday's episode of The Lost Symbol, go ahead and watch that. Otherwise, get ready to go down the rabbit hole.
But they got an extra day. So
They got a bonus day, right?
Yeah,
So, no
should have
excuse. No.
indeed.
So, what do you guys think of this week's episode?
It was actiony, a lot of action. Definitely went sideways from the book. Like we're not even in book territory
I
anymore.
agree. We're way off.
So it's cool. I'm glad to be excited by something new. But my wife keeps asking me, "He's like, oh, did you know that was going to happen?" I'm like, I have no idea, because it's not like the book.
It's a wild ride.
Yeah, they made some significant departures early on in the program that we all kind of got taken for a loop on. And now they're essentially in this last episode was like a prequel. It was behind the scenes, all the stuff that nobody ever talked about in the book.
That's true.
So now, the guy who's teaching Zachary essentially is a completely new thing. This could be its own spin-off series. It could be its own anything. So kudos to them. I think, if nothing else, this could be a creative venture that could spawn many different small mini-series or even a longer show. I don't know, but it's pretty incredible. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, I'm going
Really
for the
good.
ride. Mm-hmm. Jason, what do you think?
I do like the fact that they took some time to flesh out the transformation to explain it, because in the book they never really explain the transformative process that Zachary had to go through ultimately to become a lock. And with the TV series we got a 2.5 minute montage of it, but something.
All right. Well, cool. So this week we had really a splattering of different types of symbols, kind of just rapid fire. So we're going to try to hit as many of those. I'm sure we'll miss a few. But to start off, the episode title, because I always get fascinated with that, this week was called Noögenesis. And really it only appears in one area, and that is from the French Jesuit scientist and philosopher Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, who wrote in his posthumously published book, The Phenomenon of Man, where he talks about the 5 stages of spiritual evolution, like mental evolution. So I haven't read it all in detail, but the Noögenesis phase is the third of 5 total stages, and this is where it's like the mind elevating above society. So you have kind of the animal life, the plant life, right? And then you have some sort of intellectual, and now we're into the Noögenesis sphere. So it is an elevation of mind. It is getting closer to the Christos, or the Christ-like state, because that was the framework that he had written that in. Of course, being a Jesuit scientist, that's his framework. And so it pairs well with this episode because it's talking about mental transformation, which is, again, the whole story arc in this episode. So that's where the title comes from a book published as early as 1955, but written around 1938 to 1940. Right. And then the scene opens, the very first scene. And what do we see? We see something very familiar, especially us DC Masons. The House of the Temple.
Oh,
Yes,
hey, my
we
lodge
do.
meets in that room.
Oh, hey.
Yeah. Very cool
I mean,
room.
it does.
I think all of
Yeah.
us have been in it, right?
That
Um,
is true.
Indeed, indeed. So yeah, just we'll really briefly talk about the shot of the House of the Temple, since there's so many other symbols that we see later. But for those that are not Masons, who are not familiar with it, the House of the Temple is a Masonic temple in Washington, D.C., and it's the headquarters of the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite Southern jurisdiction. And it's home of the Supreme Council. That's where they meet. Jason, is that where the Supreme Council meets? Do they meet in that room every 2 years?
Yes, I believe so.
Hmm.
Excellent, cool. Well, I'm not a 33rd degree, nor am I a member of the Leviathan group, so I don't know these things.
You wouldn't know these things.
You wouldn't.
I'm not even
right.
a Scottish Rite Mason, and you asked me
Triskelion.
about it. So,
Yes.
But you've been in that room more than I, so I was passing the buck there. But
Fair.
yeah, the one neat thing we'll mention is that the House of the Temple itself was modeled after the tomb of King Massalas. That was an ancient pre-Hellenized Greek king in the city of Halicarnassus. And that's where the term mausoleum comes from. Every time I see the mausoleum of Massalas, I throw up internally, because it's the tomb of King Massalas. We just named it the mausoleum centuries later. And it was designed by someone named John Pope, and it is in Washington, D.C.
Right.
I think that's all we have for that.
Yeah, so I was looking at the architecture, and I said it looks smaller. There's something off about it. And with the attention to detail that Dan Brown does in his research, I would have sworn this was filmed in the House of the Temple. But I went back and looked at some of my other photos and saw it actually is a little bit different. So this is an actual photo of inside that same room, and you can see, if nothing else, the scale is different. So while they did do a really good job trying to recreating kind of the thrones and the kind of the brass artwork in the windows, one of the biggest differences that you can pick up on is this Art Deco rays of light coming out of the chair in the center. And if you go back to the previous one, it's just kind of a lattice window up top here. So none of the Art Deco sunburst, as it were.
So, John,
well, and
what I
it really
find-
doesn't capture the magnitude
No.
of that actual room. I mean,
It's
the actual
humongous.
room in the House of the Temple is humongous. And you take this giant winding marble staircase to get to these 20-foot high doors that then open into this just almost, I mean, auditorium of a room. Yeah.
It feels like they have, in several shots thus far in the program, I swear it looks green screened. And I wouldn't,
Yeah.
and I mean, it's like really good, but these small nuances, I think that film buffs are going to perhaps see, and especially for us, it almost looks like they took three-dimensional pictures of it and then like squished it and like green screened him and walked around the temple.
Hmm.
I wonder, like holodeck style, and because it's all there, but yeah, it makes you wonder.
Yeah. Also, having been there, I was thrown off a little bit because from this real life picture, if you were to turn 180 degrees around, you'd actually be standing in front of the organ that's there. So in fact, when you enter the room, you're actually entering a little bit to the left of where the observer is taking the picture. But yet in the series, they enter right in the middle. The door is placed in the middle of the wall, walking straight into this altar. So good for symmetry, but in real life, it's thrown off a little bit.
So fun fact about that, if you caught it, I don't remember if it was this scene when they were walking in or the second scene where we go back in. They do have right outside the door, they do have that really awesome Tyler's door.
I saw that. Such good attention to
with the know
detail.
thyself. Yeah.
Yeah, the Tyler's chair. But again, it's only for a brief second. But for those who saw it, we didn't get a screenshot out of that. I'm disappointed.
So I actually missed that. I was looking for it, and I missed that.
It was a flash
That
of a
was going to be
second, though.
something I brought up. Okay.
Yep. Good catch.
Yeah, this giant marble chair that the Tyler's supposed to sit in.
Yeah.
Horrifically uncomfortable.
Yes. Not good for the butt. But moving on. So they capture Malak in the previous episode, and so now they actually have him detained, but they have him like weird on this this auditorium with light shining up on him, almost on a stage, for the CIA director to come in and kind of interrogate him a little bit. But I'm noticing even that stage looks a little weird, and if you see above the stage, there is a double-headed eagle. So I'm thinking that they also put him not in the House of the Temple, but yet in a different Scottish Rite auditorium. So I'm looking for a lot of these things, and if you pay attention to the background of some of these shots, there's a lot of the old stage props, like the old ropes to move curtains and sets and all that in the back. And so for anyone who's familiar with like the Scottish Rite degrees in Masonry, it can be very theatric, very all-encompassing with all of the different sets and props and lighting that goes with that. So I'm wondering if they actually used a no kidding Scottish Rite auditorium for that scene where they hold Malak.
So I actually know where this is. It's not a Scottish Rite room. It's the Leviathan Group meeting room.
You've been there.
So, but you don't know about that.
That's right.
So,
Oh, that's right.
where they keep their prisoners.
Where they keep the prisoners.
It's a Leviathan Group black site.
Yeah, that's funny.
If you guys saw like the one version of the Hulk movie that everybody hated that had like comic pains and things, there was
The
a
Eric
scene
Bana
where
one.
yes. Yeah. They had the Hulk and his dad, Nick Nolte, right? They're like on stage, and it was just like this really weird theatrical performance where they're like yelling at each other, and that's what that scene in this particular episode reminded me of. It was like this weird, one-man show theatrical thing with one night only, Malak in a one-man show.
Yeah, it was oddly lit. Yeah, for dramatic effect. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So then we see this transformation. We get a little bit of flashback of how Malak came to be. Very first tattoo that he got after removing the owl, we'll talk maybe about the owl a little bit, is the Triskelion. So here we go again.
Shocker.
They keep, that is one thing they're consistent on, is to sneak the Triskelion in at least once in every episode. I know too much to Jason's chagrin, but do you want to talk about what they actually allude to, the 3 points of the Triskelion?
So when I was watching the episode, I ended up texting John and the other guys going, I called it. Episode 1, I called it. The Triskelion is a Trinitarian type of symbol for life, death, and rebirth. And here in this episode, Zachary gets the tattoo and then looks up at his mentor / captor / weird relationship going on there, and says, what does it mean? And he just says life, death, rebirth. I'm assuming in Turkish.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because skipping ahead a little bit, because we're going to talk a little bit about the tattoos on his mentor's body, some of the imagery there. But as he prepares to plan the escape, in which there's going to be this big fight, and he has to rough up what's Malak's previous name?
Zachary.
Zachary Solomon. When he gets ready to rough him up, he says something in a different language. Had to turn on the subtitles, and he says "Breath Bas Athbreath," and I'm trying to feel like, what is that? And it's actually Old Irish for birth, death, and rebirth. So
Really,
I don't know why he would quote an Irish phrase, but
Well, we did talk about earlier in the 9,000 other times we've mentioned the Triskelion.
Yes.
We did talk about the Celtic.
yes,
Celtic
it has
symbology
Celtic
of it,
relationships.
so.
That's true.
Yep.
That's true.
Yes, it is one of the oldest symbols for the ancient Celts. Yes.
So forget the the other symbols of other faiths and religions that he has, but he's going to go Irish for that one. So good. Awesome. So let's talk about his tattoos. This guy, which we realize now was really what Zachary modeled himself after. We see a lot here. I was happy to catch early on the alchemy symbols across his knuckles here. I thought that was a nice little addition because we hadn't seen a close-up of his tats there. And so these symbols across his knuckles are for earth, air, fire, and water. The alchemical symbols for that. And I thought that was a nice addition. What else did you guys find here?
We found what's this dude's name? Did he have a name? I don't know if anybody saw him in the credits. Does he have a nomenclature here, or are we just calling him the weird, creepy prison Yoda?
Prison Yoda.
I like Prison Yoda.
Okay, he's therefore dubbed henceforth.
Prison Yoda.
Henceforth,
Prison
he
Yoda.
would be known as Prison
So-
Yoda.
So henceforth known as Prison Yoda, you will be. On his right arm, he's got a pentagram, and then on his left arm, he's actually got what looks to be a Star of David. So it's an interesting juxtaposition between those two stars.
That is true.
So interesting. As I was looking that stuff up, so I did catch some reading about. Wait for it, RJ. If you look at some of Crowley's stuff, he definitely has multiple instances of both the pentacle and the Star of David. In some of his more fanciful
It's Crowley.
things. Whatever.
It's Crowley. No, I'm
Sorry.
messing with
Crowley. But I deserve that for the
I go
weird
by
whispering I
Crowley
did to
now.
you yesterday.
you. Uh-huh.
But
Totally
but yeah, and
threw me off my game, man.
I did. I apologize. But the it shows up in some grimoires in the 16th and 17th century as well. So how Prison Yoda is using them, I cannot say. But they definitely both come up in similar literature. But again, we'll have to ask Prison Yoda, what his thoughts were on those tats. So
They help him hyperventilate so that he can push bullets out of his skin and things like that.
well, that was little baby Zachary. That was little baby Zachary.
Oh,
that
I know.
Did that, right?
I know.
Yeah. He what did he do? He did the magic Prison Yoda breathing and healed his the cut on his arm.
His arm
right?
there. Yeah, there we go. He cut
Yep.
himself. Said,
And
"Hey,
And he healed Zachary's feet. Yes.
Yeah.
That's right.
Mhm.
Prison Yoda.
We've got the all-seeing eye, albeit inverted in his
hmm
throat area. That's gotta feel good to get
Does that mean it's
tattooed
the non-seeing eye?
the sometimes seeing eye.
What if
Well,
what if he's
all of
looking
the-
down?
Is it points in or points out?
If you guys have noticed, a lot of the major symbols that are not related to the filler are at chakra points too. So, like in particular, right? Like he's
Good
got
call.
the eye of God with like the speech, right? The manifestation, all of those symbols is like what he's relating in the episode is that by putting it on his skin, right? It's like a sacred act of like empowerment. It's almost like the belief in the thing, and then because you have it, it allows you to believe it more, and the manifestation of the power is more, right? Like, yeah, it's cool. I dig it.
It's cool.
And there was one more on there, which I actually found. I don't know if anybody else found this symbol. The one on the chest with the wings. I don't know if you guys found it. I found it on the cover of, and I think most of us have this book, David Harrison's "The Lost Rites and Rituals of Freemasonry."
Interesting.
Yes, and I did find some. So I have a copy, and if you bought a copy when he first published it, he gave you an insert with that same cover design on it, and it doesn't have. And I think I brought up his website to actually bring that up, but it's basically the cover symbol, and this is on his website, was something I designed with the help of a graphic artist named Andrew Halton, and it encapsulates a variety of symbols on the lost rites that I discuss in the book. So I mean, it's spot on what he has on his book cover, and I was not able to find any other references to it. So
A little bit of plagiarism goes a long way.
you never
So
know.
then-
They may have paid him
Copyright
royalties.
Sure.
That's true. They may have had permission to use it.
So then we get flash back, flash forward, flash sideways, back into the House of the Temple, where upon the altar now is a couple of different holy books, another instrument, and then, of course, two mentors of Zachary's as he's approaching the altar and approaching the east. So it was a pretty cool scene from a transformation type aspect, his Masonic aspect. And then it gets wild, especially when he sees his younger self. And what is this symbol here in the middle?
So this here is known to many Freemasons as a setting maul. And the setting maul was used by operative Masons to set the finish, excuse me, to set the finished stones in their proper positions in mortar so that they were flush, so that they were level, and so that they were to become, part of that perfect building. Masons, speculative Freemasons, as we like to call, ourselves of the fraternal variety and mystery school variety, know the setting maul for a different purpose because it has some darker connotations relating to death and destruction. So if you're a Freemason, you know exactly what that is.
So it was a nice touch to see him go wild with that thing.
I do like in that shot, nothing to do with the setting maul, but they show one of the really accurate things about the House of the Temple shot is that the House of the Temple has multiple sacred books on its altar, which if you go into that room today, that's exactly what it looks like. They have the major books of faith of the major religions of the world on there, which I think is super awesome and super universal. So, plus 2 points to Peacock there.
Attention to detail. They're getting some of it right. So Zachary begins his transformation, starts finding symbols through a variety of books to start tatting himself up with. And we're seeing him flip through a lot of text, some of which we've seen before. We do see this scene here that has quite a bit of skulls in it, which is awesome, and other Masonic symbols that we're familiar with. So, who can trace this set of images here?
Well, I think if you look at this particular set of images, it's not unlike a lot of the things that you've all seen before. You'll see images like this on numerous, I can't say per se like tracing boards but really
Right.
images that adorn books about high degree masonry. What you see on there can be described as those dots that are all over. Those are actually described as tears. It's also been described in some alchemical texts and some high magic texts as the seed of man. In addition, there you have the
Wow.
You were talking about all of it, right? And so there's the idea of the canopy, and by parting of the canopy, there is the logos and the chair, the seat, the mercy seat, and of course entry in. So there's a lot of things on in particular with this, but again, it's another symbol of mortality. We also have the illusion of the logos there behind the canopy or behind the rent veil can be talked about as, creative power, divine feminine. Um, it's really an amalgamation of several different things, but uh, is undoubtedly likely French in origin.
I want to say, yeah, I've seen this in some Ecosse, either
Mhm.
exposés or ritual books or
It's
something like that.
it's
Hot
definitely
grade
it's definitely the
degrees. Yeah.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
definitely French.
Lots of seed of man.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And then why stop? Why stop at masonry? We get a bunch of other text as well.
Yeah, so here you're looking at the fraternity of the Rose Cross, or the Rose Croix, Rose Croix, if you anglicize it. This just really alludes to a lot of the deeper mystic ties that Freemasonry has to other philosophies, um, alluding to the idea that this is ancient Egyptian. You'll see that motif with the sun disk and the wings. But whether or not it's Egyptian in origin is hotly debated, and then maybe it's been uh, changed over time, appropriated in Europe, and turned into what then became Rosicrucianism, or maybe not. There's a lot of, you can call it, uh, a lot of information that's out there. We don't know exactly what is correct and where we put our faith in the documents, and so on and so forth. But um, also, what you see here is in the Scottish Rite Northern jurisdiction, anyway, there's a degree where a group of dudes meet, and they don't ever really say this, but they allude to the fact that this might be like a Rosicrucian group, and they're like, "Oh, we found this other group that we can infiltrate," and it's like the Freemasons. And so that may be, and the prologue to the degree, we talk about how it's not literal; it's just a story, but it ties into Freemasonry in all these different ways, and really, organized Rosicrucianism comes out of Freemasonry in England. So then that particular group births a number of other organizations that come out of it. You have Freemasonry is organized. You have an organization of Rosicrucians who then want practical magic and come out with the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. And then that spreads across America as Alpha et Omega. And then you have all these other organizations that get birthed out of that. So
yeah.
The Rosicrucian tie-in is kind of clutch there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's, again, a whole other Masonic adjacent type of symbology he could have pulled from to Tannen himself.
Yeah. And the other thing to mention too is that there still is, right? There's the Masonic Rosicrucian group, both in the U.S. and in the U.K. and Europe, which are extremely limited in membership, and have some amazing tie-ins, but can't really talk about that stuff, kind of.
Sort of. And also, then we also get the first flash of two pillars, one with a J, one with a B. And one thing that I wanted to pick up on early was, as they were describing how tattooed he was in the beginning of the book, they quickly mentioned that he had a pillar with a J on one leg tattooed, and then a pillar with a B on it on the other leg. And yet that hasn't come up at all in the series. So it's good to see that the pillars finally show up.
Well, it's not if you saw him in that weird Leviathan group, dancing group stage, where interrogations occur. He didn't have pillars on his legs. They look like scales or something.
Right.
But yeah, it wasn't, definitely, again, it strayed far from the book. Because
it
I was looking
me
for
of
that.
like plate armor.
Right. Yeah. Or
yeah.
Snake scales or
we
something.
See, y'all ever see some Masonic temples that have the imagery of the fish man? Like, yeah. So, I don't know. But yeah, you definitely saw that kind of scaly pattern, whatever it was.
Yeah, so those pillars are familiar to Freemasons, at least from your second degree forward. But you know, they're emblematical of the pillars at King Solomon's temple, and which we use as an allegory to carry the person through the Master Mason degree and help improve their own temple. So yes, there is a Masonic correlation there with the pillars, with the J and the B.
And hidden knowledge, right?
Yes.
Like
What else?
the whole idea behind JB, those two pillars, which those those actually have been anglicized. So initially, it was what would have been two letters that would have stood for pancakes and green beans. But
Right.
No. Yeah.
no, sorry, Joe had to. No, so it's supposed to be the repository for the archives of Masonry, which can or cannot be correlated to other fraternal organizations that existed that came out of Masonry in a later stage, right? Like Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, which then takes that same idea, puts it on the pillars in their chamber, right, to represent all the compiled knowledge of mankind. One of fire, one of stone, or one of stone, one of iron to guard against conflagration. Guard against fire or flood. So to preserve the knowledge, and then we see that same thing here in Freemasonry, right? And what are they after? What's this guy after? The secret knowledge. So undoubtedly, you can link those pillars to a search for hidden archaic knowledge.
I like
It's very Enochian. Yes.
Yes. And then I think also another thing that we see Kate Solomon go back to is this sensory deprivation type chamber where we first saw it as they were doing experiments on the Buddhist monks, and then also experiments on remote viewing, and yet now she herself is in there meditating to try to get a feel for what she's lost. Jason, tell us more about that.
Yeah, so this particular chamber, it's not complete sensory deprivation. It's what's known as an anechoic chamber, and there are rooms like this around the world today where the walls are fitted with like noise canceling devices acoustically, where it blocks out literally all sound down to like -10 decibels. And so it is a complete, almost auditory deprivation of your hearing. And I think 45 minutes in one is the longest someone has ever lasted, because you start to hear the blood coursing through your veins. You start to hear your lungs expand and contract. And a number of people also hallucinate, because the brain is so used to that auditory stimulus that in the absence it will make up its own. And
It's
so
wild.
um,
Wild.
so sensory deprivation chambers and anechoic chambers have been thought to clear the mind, enable you to, focus your own energy and contemplation. Um, so when Robert asks her what she's doing, and she's saying, I'm trying to feel Zachary. She's trying to get on Zachary's wavelength by um, entering into a deprived state from a sensory perspective. That does jive with the I think some of the ideas and some of the science behind sensory deprivation.
Awesome. Yeah. So much more to that, and which is great for her study into the noetic sciences. So that's pretty cool. So thank you for looking at that, because I wouldn't last long in one myself. I know that for sure.
No.
Getting
thanks.
alone with these thoughts, not a good idea. All right. So what else did you, the viewer, find? Let us know in the comments below. Otherwise, that's all for this week's episode. If you want to see more content on the signs, symbols, and other aspects of Freemasonry, subscribe to this channel, the Masonic Roundtable. Otherwise, thanks, and we'll see you next week.